Alongside Janice Pennington and Diane Parkinson, Holly Hallstrom was one of Barker's beauties, a trio of models who assisted game show host Bob Barker on his popular daytime program The Price is Right. Hallstrom appeared on the iconic series for almost 30 years, from 1977 to 95, but much like her colleagues, her departure from the show was marred with controversy. When it was time to leave The Price is Right, she had nothing nice to say about her boss or the workplace she had devoted so much of her life to. Bob Barker may seem like a cordial, kind-hearted man. Many of us spent years glued to our TV screens as he instructed overjoyed contestants to come on down. And of course, there was always his daily insistence we have our pets spayed and neutered to help control the pet population. How could a man like that have enemies? Join Factsverse as we take a closer look at the controversies and scandals that destroyed Holly Hallstrom's career. Holly Hallstrom's early life. Holly Ann Hallstrom came into this world August 25, 1952, in San Antonio, Texas. As a starry-eyed teen, Hallstrom already knew she wanted to pursue a career in showbiz. After finishing high school and enrolling in college, she started modeling to pay for tuition. What started off as a part-time modeling gig eventually evolved into a full-fledged career. When visiting LA, she managed to land a job that changed her life forever. After Holly auditioned to become one of Barker's beauties on The Price is Right, Barker and the other producers were so impressed by what they saw, they offered her a permanent position modeling on the show. After Anitra Ford had left the show the following year, a vacancy was open that needed to be filled. But they weren't about to just give that gig to anyone. To be one of Barker's beloved beauties, a model had to be stunningly beautiful and likable. Hallstrom, fortunately, fit that bill perfectly. Not only was she gorgeous, but she also had that unmistakable it factor. Her first appearance on the show was on January 3, 1977. That taping served as a model tryout. Several other potential models had made appearances on the program, but Holly proved the producer's favorite. After being chosen as the permanent replacement for Anitra, Hallstrom was officially made a full-on Barker beauty in February of that year. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Factsverse if you haven't already. And stick around for more of Holly Hallstrom's story. A series of unfortunate events. Things got off to a rough start for Hallstrom. She became well known for making blunders and having embarrassing mishaps related to various prices and set props. While those bloopers probably made her feel pretty self-conscious, the audience loved it, and she quickly became a fan favorite. During the October 16, 1981 taping, Holly experienced a wardrobe malfunction while dancing to the song Celebration by Kool and the Gang. She had gotten so caught up in the music that her dress began to fall off her body. After she realized what was happening, Hallstrom bolted behind announcer Johnny Olsen and host Bob Barker. Fortunately, Bob saved the day by stepping in front of Holly and covering her up with his jacket. Another humorous set of bloopers involving Hallstrom involved the now infamous brand of consumer goods Gibson kitchen appliances. On one occasion, the refrigerator door kept swinging back open when she tried to shut it. A similar thing happened with a Gibson dishwasher on a later episode. In February 1993, while modeling alongside a jukebox and dancing around with a male mannequin, the mannequin started falling apart piece by piece. The audience roared in laughter, as Holly hadn't noticed that her dancing partner had been disintegrating. After Rod Ruddy finished reading the prize description and Holly realized what had happened, she joined in on the laughter, while Bob jokingly quipped that with Holly, you could never tell if these kinds of things had been planned or not. Holly's mostly unsuccessful acting career. In 1983, Hallstrom chose to leave the series to pursue an acting career. In her absence, several models filled her position. The three most notable were only known by their first names: Chanel, a blonde who first appeared on November 14th, Pat, who was the first African-American model to appear on the show, and Andy, a brunette who's believed to be Hollywood actress Andie MacDowell. Also filling in for Holly for a stint was Janice Baker, best known for her work on Jim Perry's Card Sharks, Christian Bjorklund, who also appeared on Card Sharks, and Kyle Aletter, who originally was a contestant on the show and was selected to be Holly's permanent replacement, but was instead signed on as a sub. Holly's acting career never really took off as she hoped it would, and she returned to The Price is Right in 1984. She did later enjoy a brief acting career shortly before and after departing The Price is Right for the second and final time in the mid-90s. A few of her most notable credits include roles in the 1996 TV film The Tomorrow Man, and an uncredited appearance in 1993's Loaded Weapon 1. She also appeared briefly in a bit part in the 1989 TV series The Nut House. After returning to The Price is Right in the spring of 1984, Hallstrom remained at her post until her abrupt dismissal from the show in October of '95. Hallstrom was seriously injured on more than one occasion. On December 10, 1992, Kathleen Bradley and Hallstrom were both seriously injured during a showcase that involved a 500-pound industrial stove on a rotating display platform. When the stagehands wheeled out another prize on the showcase, a 1.5-ton boat, the vessel's hull bumped into the stove, tipping it over onto Hallstrom and Bradley. Holly managed to jump out of the way, while Kathleen was struck by it and immobilized by its weight. When the stage crew realized what was happening, they rushed in to come to her rescue. When they pushed the appliance off her, it came crashing to the ground, bursting into thousands of pieces as both models were struck by its sharp and heavy pieces, resulting in bodily harm. Both ladies were rushed to a nearby hospital. They were left with severe bruising and several lacerations. As a result, they were unable to return to work the following day. The accident prompted a lawsuit against CBS. The network settled things with the two models, however, by offering them monetary compensation. Holly's departure and subsequent legal battle. In September of 1995, Bob Barker abruptly dismissed Hallstrom from The Price is Right. She first asserted that Bob had dismissed her after gaining 14 pounds due to a prescription medication she was taking. She later claimed the real reason why she was given the axe was because of her refusal to back Barker when fellow beauty Diane Parkinson sued him for sexual harassment. Allegedly, Barker had ordered her to do interviews and talk shows to say Parkinson was lying. She claims he also coached her to recall specific events differently than she had remembered them. Holly refused to lie for Barker and wound up on the receiving end of his notorious wrath. After the public initiated a spirited letter-writing campaign complaining about her dismissal, Barker sued Hallstrom for slander and libel. 48 hours before the trial, Barker backed down and dropped his suit. The court ordered Bob to pay Hallstrom's legal fees, declaring her the prevailing party. Hallstrom then countersued Barker for discrimination, wrongful termination, and malicious prosecution. In 2005, Hallstrom won her case and was awarded a multi-million-dollar settlement. After that, Barker refused to sign an agreement that would have forbid him from talking to the media about Hallstrom. To avoid having her name run through the mud, Hallstrom then agreed to a less significant settlement that would prevent Barker from talking about the case. Holly has never married, nor has she any children. This is likely why she was the only one of Barker's beauties who, as she puts it, could stand up to the miserable tyranny at the hands of a mad dictator, which of course she means Barker. During her decade-long legal battle with Bob, Holly spent all her savings, had to sell her house, and ended up homeless living out of her car. Nowadays, Hallstrom is doing a lot better. At 69, she's semi-retired and living in one of several houses she owns in San Antonio. She occasionally does appearances and interviews, but for the most part, stays out of the spotlight. In 2000, fans of The Price is Right were shocked to learn that longtime model Janice Pennington would no longer be appearing on the classic game show. The announcement came as just as much of a surprise to the model herself. Janice had been on the show for 28 years and had filmed well over 6,000 episodes. Audiences had come to associate Janice with the program just as much as host Bob Barker himself, and many fans were outraged at her sudden departure. While Janice's departure made the biggest waves, she wasn't the only beloved member of The Price is Right's team to be let go at the time. Another one of the show's models, as well as several members of the creative staff, were also let go. The other model was Kathleen Bradley, though she hadn't been a member of the show's team for quite as long as Janice. Because of this, her departure didn't make as many waves. Though Janice Pennington wasn't the only one being booted off the program, her departure was the one that audiences had the hardest time dealing with. Angry letters came pouring in, though the powers that be were firm in their stance that there was no longer room for Janice or any of the other fired employees on The Price is Right. But no clear reason was ever given for why they were let go. Janice and Kathleen knew the real reason. In the years leading up to their firing, both Janice and Kathleen had refused to defend host Bob Barker and the show in a wrongful termination lawsuit that came about after the firing of Holly Hallstrom. Holly had been dismissed from The Price is Right in 1995, but there was a clear reason given for her termination. Still, that wasn't determined by much of the public to be a very good one. As it turns out, she was fired from The Price is Right as the result of a minor weight gain. Of course, Holly wasn't too happy about being let go from the series for such a superficial reason and subsequently sued. When she sued Bob Barker and The Price is Right for what she felt was wrongful termination, the show's staff asked remaining models, such as Janice and Kathleen, to testify against the former game show model in court to prove there was no negativity or discrimination going on in the hiring and firing of the show's beautiful ladies, which have often been colloquially referred to as Barker's beauties. Never take the stand against a fellow model. For whatever reason, both Janice and Kathleen flat out refused to testify in the defense of Bob Barker and the show. It may have been the two models agreed with the point that their former peer was trying to make with her wrongful termination lawsuit. Janice and Kathleen may not have been able to find it in themselves to defend Bob and the show. Or they may have simply not wanted to get up on the stand and start attacking Holly, given the fact that she used to be one of them. Either way, Janice and Kathleen refused to testify, and they likely lost their jobs because of it. When they were booted off The Price is Right, there was no episode paying respects to the longtime models. There wasn't even so much as a farewell. The duties of the two models were simply passed over to remaining model Nikki Zering with little fanfare, and Nikki retained her duties for the next several years. It was likely an intentional move on the part of The Price is Right's creative team not to mention their departure, because they didn't want to stir the pot. The reaction to the models being fired had been bad enough without drawing attention to it on the show. Not long after being fired, both Janice and Kathleen joined the ranks of former peer Holly Hallstrom by suing The Price is Right for wrongful termination. Before we tell you more about it, be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to Facts First if you haven't already. Janice and Kathleen settled out of court. Shortly into Janice Pennington and Kathleen Bradley's respective wrongful termination lawsuits against The Price is Right, the two former models ended up settling out of court for an undisclosed sum. Janice's settlement came complete with a hush clause that prevented her from disparaging Bob Barker, while Kathleen's settlement included no such clause. Because of this, Kathleen has been the much more outspoken of the two when it comes to her negative feelings about the situation in the wake of the settlement. Both models claimed it wasn't Bob Barker who had fired them personally, but instead the network. While Janice Pennington and Kathleen Brady were willing to settle out of court, this wasn't the case with Holly Hallstrom. It resulted in a 10-year legal battle in which the former game show model didn't let up for a second. Holly had been fired from The Price is Right in 1995. A clear reason had been given, and she was fired directly by Bob Barker. As established, the reason for Holly being fired was she'd put on a few pounds. Following her firing, Holly recounted how the show's creative team often hid her behind large objects so the audience couldn't make out her figure. When this was happening, Holly didn't think all that much about it. However, in retrospect, the star came to realize the show's staff was trying to hide her minuscule weight gain. Holly was understandably offended by the notion that she needed to be let go from the series just because she'd put on some barely noticeable weight. But there was also the fact of the matter that Holly didn't fully believe her weight gain was the real reason for her being let go. Instead, she believed the real reason was because she, like Janice Pennington and Kathleen Bradley after her, refused to testify on Bob Barker's behalf. Janice and Kathleen's story mirrored Holly Hallstrom's. Just as Janice and Kathleen would be asked to do against her many years later, Holly was asked during what would end up being her final years to testify against one of her former peers to defend her employer. She was asked to testify against a model named Diane Parkinson. Diane exited The Price is Right for undisclosed reasons in 1993 before coming out of the woodwork shortly afterwards with a sexual harassment lawsuit against Bob. When it was revealed Diane Parkinson would be suing Bob Barker for sexual harassment, Bob asked Holly to do some press events and tell the world Diane wasn't telling the truth. Not wanting to get involved, Holly refused. She thought she was in the clear until she was fired for weight gain. Of course, it's not hard to connect the dots and assume there definitely could have been an ulterior motive for Holly's firing. If this is the case, it seems Diane's sexual harassment lawsuit had a snowball effect that ended up costing The Price is Right a whole lot of money. Holly Hallstrom didn't take her removal from the show lying down, and subsequently brought about her aforementioned wrongful termination lawsuit. Bob tried to sue her for slander, claiming she was lying about him in the wake of her firing. The lawsuit was thrown out, and Bob was forced to pay Holly's legal fees. As far as her wrongful termination lawsuit, it ended up taking a whopping 10 years for Holly to get justice in the courts. The whole debacle likely could have been over much faster if Holly had taken an out-of-court settlement, but the ex-model truly wanted justice. Holly Hallstrom found justice in the courts. Holly ended up using all her money in her battle against The Price is Right, to the point where she was said to be living out of her car towards the end of it. Her perseverance ended up paying off, however, as she emerged from the legal battle as its victor in 2005, with many millions of dollars to her name as a result. Diane Parkinson's early life. Parkinson was born Diane Lynn Batts on November 30th, 1944 in Jacksonville, North Carolina. When she was 4, her family moved to Falls Church, Virginia, an affluent suburb of D.C. Her family was very strict and devout Catholics. Her father also came from a military background. Not feeling satisfied with suburban life in Northern Virginia, Parkinson always knew she eventually wanted to move away in search of greener pastures. She knew her parents' strict rules and strong religious views didn't resonate with her. When she turned 18, she left them behind, moved out on her own, and started competing in beauty pageants. She was particularly fond of donning a bikini and strutting her stuff down the catwalk. The public, likewise, were also fans of what she had to offer. Parkinson was always stunningly beautiful. It was this eye-catching beauty that eventually led her to achieving her dreams of making it big. In 1965, Parkinson won the Miss District of Columbia, USA title. She then competed in the Miss USA 1965 pageant, in which she placed 4th runner-up. Later that year, she won the 1965 Miss USA World Contest. From there, she went on to represent the U.S. at the International Miss World Contest and was runner-up behind Leslie Langley of the UK. Parkinson was given the opportunity to travel with the Bob Hope USO show, performing for the troops in Vietnam in December of 1965. Since Bob Hope was a highly influential person in the entertainment industry, he was the one who helped Diane meet the right people to get her TV career off the ground. Technically speaking, her first TV appearance was on the Bob Hope Vietnam Christmas show, but her first significant role was in a 1974 Hal Cooper film titled Jerry. She was additionally a guest star on The Mary Tyler Moore Show in 1975. Diane Parkinson, The Price is Right years. Parkinson served as a stage model on The Price is Right from 1975 to 93. She became the second longest working model to appear on the show, only quitting after being on it for 18 years. The longest working model on the show was Janice Pennington, who appeared on the show for over 28 years. Diane landed the job after being asked to fill in for another model, Anitra Ford, in mid-April 1975. After a 3-episode trial period, Parkinson was invited to join the show's cast permanently in August of 1975. She later got a chance to appear on a number of other game shows and talk programs, including The Maury Povich Show, The Joan Rivers Show, and The New Hollywood Squares. Alongside her Price is Right colleague Janice, Diane also appeared as a guest on a handful of episodes of The Regis and Kathy Lee Show. In 1978, she also appeared in the pilot of the TV series Vegas. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like, and subscribe to Factsverse if you haven't already. And stick around for a lot more about Diane Parkinson. Parkinson's departure from The Price is Right. In 1993, Bob Barker announced that Diane would be leaving the show to pursue other career opportunities. A year later, Parkinson filed a sexual harassment lawsuit against Bob Barker in LA Superior Court. In the suit, Diane claimed Barker coerced her into a lengthy 3-year sexual affair in which she had experienced an incredible amount of emotional pain and eventually led to her having a miscarriage. Barker vehemently denied the allegations, claiming that although they did in fact have sexual relations, he never violated Diane's consent. Barker further denied he had ever threatened to fire Diane from the show. The lawsuit was dropped in 1995, with Parkinson stating it would have been too costly and emotionally taxing for her to pursue it any further. That might not have been the full story, however, because it's been reported that in April of 1995, Diane was paid an undisclosed sum of money to stop the investigation. It's also worth noting that Janice Pennington came to Bob Barker's defense, publicly stating he had never harassed Diane. The Naked Truth, Diane Parkinson's post-Price is Right career. Parkinson appeared on the cover of Playboy magazine twice, first in December of 91 and again in May of 93. In the latter appearance, she was featured exclusively in the newsstand exclusive collector's edition of the magazine, Playboy Presents Diane Parkinson. That same year, she was also featured in the 55-minute documentary video Playboy Celebrity Centerfold, Diane Parkinson. By the end of 1993, she had become the official spokesperson for a piece of commercial workout equipment called Easy Crunch. To promote the product, she appeared in multiple commercial videos. In 1994, she appeared as a guest star on the animated talk program Space Ghost Coast to Coast. Since then, she hasn't made many public appearances and is currently enjoying her retirement at her home in Westlake Village, California. Diane's love life. In 1967, Diane married a man named Robert E. Parkinson, which is incidentally how she got her surname. Robert was the executive producer of the Miss Universe pageant. A few years later, the couple filed for divorce. In 1977, she married legendary Hollywood producer E. Duke Vincent, best known for his work on TV series like Charmed, Melrose Place, and Beverly Hills 90210. While married to Diane, Vincent produced Vegas, Strikeforce, and Aloha Paradise. Parkinson and Vincent later divorced before Parkinson got involved with Bob Barker. She reportedly has dated other TV show producers, and it's rumored she got married to a man named Robert C. Gardner in 2000. Parkinson wasn't the only Price is Right accuser. The Price is Right has been accused on numerous occasions of being too sexual. For example, Diane once appeared on the show promoting a sauna prize while clad only in a short red towel that would have fallen off her body if she hadn't held it up. In addition to Parkinson, models Holly Hallstrom, Kathleen Bradley, and Janice Pennington later accused Barker of sexual harassment and wrongful termination. Even after Barker left the program in 2007, models still felt uncomfortable working on The Price is Right. Executive producer Mike Richards and producer Adam Sandler, no relation to the actor, have both been accused of inappropriate behavior towards models who have appeared on the show. In 2012, former Miss USA 97 winner Brandy Sherwood, who had also appeared on The Price is Right, filed a lawsuit against the show, claiming she was fired during her maternity leave. She ended up proving her case and was awarded $8 million from the show's producers. Barker's Beauties. Barker's Beauties refers to that group of models who appeared on the show Price is Right. It's derived from the show's former host, Bob Barker, who presented the show from 1972 to 2007. The models were dubbed Barker's Beauties in reference to their association with Barker and their role in presenting and demonstrating prizes on the show. The concept of using models to showcase prizes originated with the inception of The Price is Right in the 50s. When the show was revived in 1972 with Barker as the host, the role of the models became more prominent, and they became a staple of the show. Barker's Beauties typically presented the various prizes, from household items and cash to cars and vacations, that contestants could win. The models would interact with the various prizes, demonstrating their use or revealing them to the contestants and audience, becoming an integral part of the show's appeal and format. They were known for their charm, poise, and friendly demeanor, and they played a key role in the show's success and popularity. Diane Parkinson. Diane Parkinson, born Diana Lynn Batts on November 3, 1944 in Jacksonville, North Carolina, is a former American model who gained widespread recognition as one of Barker's beauties. Before her television career, she had achieved success in the pageant world, winning titles such as Miss District of Columbia, USA, and representing Washington, D.C. in the Miss USA pageant. Her modeling career was notably highlighted by her 18-year stint on The Price is Right from 1975 to 93, where she became one of the most recognizable and enduring models on the show. Her departure from The Price is Right in 1993 and subsequent legal battle cast a shadow over her successful career. In 1994, she filed a lawsuit against the show's host, Bob Barker, alleging sexual harassment. Parkinson claimed she had been coerced into a 3-year sexual relationship with Barker in exchange for job security. Barker denied the allegations, asserting that the relationship was consensual and that Parkinson was retaliating because she had been passed over for a promotional role that would have featured her in showcases on the show. The lawsuit and surrounding media attention brought a scandalous element to the otherwise family-friendly image of The Price is Right. The case was eventually dropped by Parkinson in 1995, citing the emotional and financial strain of the legal battle. Barker maintained his innocence and continued to host the show until his retirement in 2007. Parkinson's career, while significantly marked by her time on The Price is Right and the subsequent controversy, also includes various modeling endeavors including appearances in Playboy magazine in the 1990s. Holly Hallstrom. Holly Hallstrom was one of the prominent models on The Price is Right, known for a charismatic and lively presence. Born August 24, 1952 in San Antonio, Hallstrom became one of Barker's beauties in 1977 and remained on the show for nearly 2 decades, becoming a familiar and beloved face to the show's viewers. Her tenure on the show was characterized by her cheerful demeanor and playful interactions with the host and contestants. But Holly's departure from The Price is Right in the mid-1990s was marred by controversy and legal disputes, revealing a less than glamorous behind-the-scenes atmosphere. Hallstrom was dismissed from the show in 1995, and the circumstances surrounding her departure became the subject of a contentious legal battle. She claimed her dismissal was due to her refusal to support Bob Barker in his legal dispute with Diane Parkinson, and her weight gain, which was a result of a medical condition. Hallstrom alleged she was pressured to lose weight and was ultimately fired because she did not conform to the show's aesthetic expectations. Bob and the show's producers contended that Hallstrom's dismissal was due to her inability to get along with the production staff and disruptive behavior. The legal battle that ensued was both lengthy and public, casting a shadow over the show's wholesome image. Hallstrom was adamant about standing up against what she perceived as unfair treatment and discrimination based on her appearance, and her refusal to side with Barker against Parkinson. In 2005, Hallstrom won her wrongful termination and defamation case, marking a significant victory in a decade-long battle. The controversy surrounding her departure and subsequent legal fight highlighted issues related to workplace treatment, body image, and the challenges faced by women in the entertainment business. Holly's career, while significantly impacted by her time on The Price is Right and the associated controversy, reflects a narrative of resilience and standing firm in the face of adversity. Janice Pennington. Janice Pennington, born July 8, 1942 in Seattle, is widely recognized for her long-standing role as one of the original Barker's beauties. Before that, she worked as a model and actress, even becoming one of the most notable Playboy playmates in the 70s. Her career took a definitive turn when she became a model on The Price is Right in 1972, a position she held for 29 years, making her one of the longest-serving models on the show. But her career on the show wasn't without challenges and controversies. One of the significant incidents in her career happened in 1988 during a taping of the show when she was accidentally struck by a camera. The accident resulted in serious injuries, including a broken collarbone and damage to her cheekbone and eye socket, which required surgical intervention. Despite the severity of the incident and the impact it had on her, Pennington continued to work on the show for several more years. Her departure in 2000 was abrupt and shrouded in controversy. She was unexpectedly let go from the show, sparking speculation and rumors regarding the circumstances of her departure. Pennington, who had become a familiar and beloved face to viewers over nearly 3 decades, was replaced without a formal goodbye, leaving fans and colleagues surprised and disappointed. After that, Janice Pennington has kept a relatively low profile. She co-wrote a book called Husband, Lover, Spy, A True Story, which details her experiences being married to a spy during the Cold War. Her career, while significantly defined by her time on The Price is Right, also is a narrative of adaptability and resilience, navigating the highs and lows of the entertainment industry and the challenges presented by unexpected and uncontrollable circumstances. Legacy of the Beauties. On the one hand, they're remembered for their charm, elegance, and the lighthearted entertainment they brought to the show, becoming integral components of its appeal and success. The models became household names, and their interactions with the prizes, contestants, and Barker himself were often delightful and entertaining to watch. But the legacy of Barker's beauties is also intertwined with the controversies and legal disputes that unfolded, revealing a less glamorous aspect of the entertainment industry. In the broader context, the legacy of the Barker's beauties serves as a reminder and a point of reflection about the complexities and paradoxes in the entertainment world. Diane Parkinson. Before landing the gig on The Price is Right, Parkinson had competed in beauty pageants for several years. In 1965, she won the Miss District of Columbia USA title. She then competed in the Miss USA 1965 pageant and placed fourth runner-up. Later that year, she won the 1965 Miss USA World Contest. She went on to represent the U.S. at the International Miss World Contest and was runner-up behind Leslie Langley of the UK. After gaining recognition, Parkinson toured with the Bob Hope USO show and appeared on his Vietnam Christmas television special in December of 1965. Hope then put her in touch with influential people in the industry that helped her get her TV career off the ground. In 1975, after appearing on an episode of The Mary Tyler Moore Show, Parkinson was offered a 3-episode trial period as a model on The Price is Right. Filling in for another model we'll be discussing in a bit, Anitra Ford. The show's producers liked her so much, they called her back onto the show permanently later that year. Diane was the beauty who seemed most comfortable wearing a 2-piece bathing suit every episode, but she was also the one who would ultimately be the most problematic for Barker. Parkinson's looks and penchant for wearing skimpy swimsuits eventually allowed her to explore other modeling opportunities. Not only did she do Playboy magazine on more than one occasion, but she was also given her own exclusive Playboy Collector's Edition and VHS Video Centerfold Special. The classic era of Price is Right arguably ended in 1993 after Parkinson left the show. When Bob announced her departure, he claimed she was leaving to pursue other interests. But a year later, she slapped Barker with an $8 million lawsuit claiming he had forced her into a 3-year affair that involved sexual coercion and led to her having a miscarriage. Barker admitted he did have a sexual relationship with Parkinson, but claimed it was consensual. Parkinson's wrongful termination suit was dismissed, but the sexual harassment charges stayed. Diane, however, would ultimately drop the charges in '95, citing mental and emotional distress and a lack of funds to continue paying for her legal fees. It's also been alleged that Barker paid Parkinson an undisclosed sum to drop the investigation. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Facts First if you haven't already. And stick around, we have 3 beauties to cover. Janice Pennington. Pennington was one of the first Barker beauties, working alongside Anitra Ford. She was also the show's longest-running model. Janice joined the show in 1972 at its start. Between the 2 beauties that were featured on the show back then, Pennington was considered the more mature, classier one. For 29 years, she dutifully handed Bob his oversized microphone at the beginning of each episode and never tried to upstage him or the products. A year before landing her career-defining job on The Price is Right, Pennington was Playboy's Playmate of the Month in May of 1971. It's conceivable that appearing in the magazine contributed to her landing a spot on The Price is Right. Throughout her time on the game show, she seemed to be the one model, aside from Anitra Ford, who had the least problems with Bob Barker and her treatment on the show. There was an incident, however, in 1988 when she was knocked unconscious by a camera and fell into Contestant's row. Fortunately, she recovered from the accident, but after needing reconstructive surgery, she was left with scars and one of her shoulders sat lower than the other. After that, her days of modeling in bathing suits were cut short, but even so, she still managed to outlast all the beauties by a long shot. She ended up leaving the show in 2000 under some murky circumstances. Pennington was unexpectedly dismissed after a taping of an October 2000 episode. There was no announcement made, and Barker never spoke of her again. Evidently, she had signed a settlement that forbid her from discussing the details of her dismissal, so we'll probably never know what really happened. One popular theory is that the then 58-year-old model was given the axe to make room for a younger, more attractive model to take her place. It also might have been Barker's spiteful way of getting back at her for testifying in the wrongful termination suit brought on by the next beauty we'll be talking about. Hallstrom. On January 3, 1977, Hallstrom joined the other 2 beauties on The Price is Right, Pennington and Parkinson, after Anitra Ford left the show the previous fall. In 1983, Hallstrom briefly left the game show to pursue an acting career, but she rejoined in 1984. In September of 1995, Bob Barker fired Hallstrom. She first asserted that Bob had dismissed her after she'd gained 14 pounds due to a prescription medication she was on. Hallstrom later claimed the real reason she was given the boot was because of her refusal to back Barker when Diane Parkinson sued him for sexual harassment. Allegedly, Barker had ordered her to do interviews and talk shows to say Parkinson was lying. She claims he also coached her to recall specific events differently than she did. After the public initiated a letter-writing campaign complaining about her dismissal, Barker sued Hallstrom for slander and libel. 48 hours before the trial, Barker backed down and dropped the suit. The court ordered Bob to pay Hallstrom's legal fees, declaring her the prevailing party. Hallstrom then countersued Barker for discrimination, wrongful termination, and malicious prosecution. In 2005, she won her case and was awarded a multi-million-dollar settlement. Anitra Ford. Best remembered for her work as a model from 1972 to 76 on The Price is Right, Ford got her start modeling in the 60s. She landed her first acting role, albeit uncredited, in the 1971 film The Love Machine. She went on to appear in films such as The Birdcage, Messiah of Evil, and Invasion of the Bee-Girls. Her most notable film role was appearing alongside Burt Reynolds in the opening scene of 1971's The Longest Yard, in which she played Burt's rich girlfriend, Melissa Gaines. On TV, Ford scored roles in shows like The Odd Couple, Starsky and Hutch, and Wonder Woman. Anitra had been one of Barker's beauties since the show's start in 1972. In 76, after almost 5 years of being a model on the program, Ford became the first beauty to quit. She was the only permanent model from the Bob Barker era to have left the program on relatively good terms. Bob Barker's amazing journey. Bob Barker made his career debut on a game show called Truth or Consequences in 1956. He hosted the show for 18 years before getting the golden opportunity to host The Price is Right in 1972. After becoming the face of 2 game shows, Barker gained international recognition. He hosted thousands of episodes throughout his career and even took on the role of producer for many years. Throughout his time on The Price is Right, Barker, together with the producers Roger Dobowitz and Philip Rossi, earned the show many accolades. From 1982 to 2007, The Price is Right received 30 nominations and 23 wins from the Daytime Emmy Awards. Not only that, Barker also set a Guinness World Record. He held the record for the most episodes of television ever hosted, with over 6,700 episodes under his belt. He held the record until 2014, when Alex Trebek of Jeopardy overtook him. Bob Barker's replacement. After Barker left his position as the host of The Price is Right, the network had to find a replacement. After all, the show became one of the most watched programs in TV history. In 2007, Barker was replaced by Drew Carey. Many fans accepted the change and even embraced Carey as the new host. However, it's rare that any show of this caliber can have a change in staffing without a little pushback. In this case, the pushback came from Bob Barker himself. Barker fearlessly stated his opinion on Drew Carey in a TMZ interview. He felt the show was genuinely entertaining during his reign, but when Carey took over, it turned into something not even worth watching. He blamed this specifically on Carey's lack of engagement, saying the show was now dull and lifeless. Still, Bob Barker understands why the show is able to continue even with a lackluster host. He says it's all thanks to the audience and the viewers at home. Once the contestants begin to make a bid on the items on the show, he says viewers and audience members alike are immediately engaged. The show's ability to keep viewers involved was the secret to success. Even though Barker doesn't seem thrilled with his replacement, he still made several appearances on the show since he retired. The first came in 2009, when he appeared to advertise his autobiography. Later, in 2013, he appeared in celebration of his 90th birthday. Most recently, in 2015, he appeared as part of an April Fool's episode. Bob Barker avoids the show. Besides a few appearances in recent years, Barker seems to avoid The Price is Right whenever possible. He proudly told Good Morning America he doesn't even watch it on TV anymore. Whether this is because of Drew Carey's performance as host, or whether Barker simply never liked the show to begin with, is anyone's guess. He says he occasionally turns the show on for a game or two, but doesn't watch it regularly. After his vocal dissatisfaction with Drew Carey and what the show has turned into, it shouldn't be much of a surprise that Barker feels so uninterested in watching the show. Many viewers are concerned that it's possible he disliked the show all along, but masked his distaste for the sake of continuing his successful job as host. Specifically, viewers are raising questions about the show's 40th anniversary in 2012. Bob Barker was noticeably absent from this anniversary program. However, he may have had a good reason. The producers of the 40th anniversary episode were offering admission to SeaWorld and the Calgary Stampede as rewards. Barker is a vocal animal advocate and made the public decision to avoid any association with the show's anniversary episode because SeaWorld and the Calgary Stampede are notorious for animal abuse. Bob Barker's controversy. Barker's career was largely respected, but few celebrities are able to survive decades in the spotlight without any controversy. For Barker, the accusations came in 1994 from former model Diane Parkinson. Parkinson was one of the Barker's beauties, a model who was on stage for the Price is Right productions. She came at Bob Barker and the show with an $8 million lawsuit, claiming she was told to be intimate with Barker or else she would lose her job. The production team quickly removed Parkinson from the show, and while Barker initially denied the allegations, it was later revealed the two had been having a sexual relationship for over a year. Many of these issues ended up being settled behind the scenes, and the network likely had to take some serious and costly actions to keep the show moving without legal interruptions. Unfortunately, the damage was already done to the reputation of Barker and The Price is Right. Even worse, this wouldn't be the last allegation. In 2007, just before Barker's retirement, a longtime employee had accusations of her own. Deborah Curling worked on the show for 25 years, screening contestants for the show. She came forward with accusations of discrimination as well as many other concerns, which she had evidently been struggling with for many years. Bob Barker's animal activism. Due to his strong beliefs, Barker's commitment to animal welfare has led him to make numerous decisions that landed him in hot water, namely his decision to avoid the 40th anniversary episode. And while many celebrities give in to the pressures of the media, Barker has held true to his beliefs and continues to fight for what he believes in. After his retirement, he devoted himself to efforts that would make our planet a kinder and safer place for animals of all kind. He offered $2.5 million to PETA to help construct their LA facility, which is now known as the Bob Barker Building. In 2014, he invested $700,000 to relocate 3 elephants from a Toronto zoo to a California wildlife sanctuary. Bob Barker today. Behind all this drama, there's still something to be said of host Bob Barker. These accusations and other turbulence can be shocking because we know him so well for hosting The Price is Right with a smile. After departing as host, Barker was a morning TV star for the rest of the season. Even though he retired and handed over his long and slim spotlight to TV star Drew Carey, he's still getting attention as he has done during his career. He used his impressive talent to give us the feeling that The Price is Right is not just a game show, but something revolutionary. In addition to earning numerous awards, The Price is Right has the title of longest-running daytime game show in North American television history. Today, Bob Barker, at 97 years old, is still happily retired. With the 50th anniversary of The Price is Right coming up, perhaps we can expect to see him return to the iconic program soon. The Price is Right is a show that appeals to every age group and section of society. The show's format is simple. Anyone who can guess the right price of common household items, such as a bottle of canned tomatoes, coffee, and shampoo bottles, takes home some easy cash. One may think that guessing the right price is easy, but ask the pricing managers and they'll tell you how difficult it is to pin down the right price of a product. If you're a fan of the show, you certainly have dreamed of hearing the line, "Come on down." The Price is Right is one of the most popular shows around the world, and through its 49-season-long run, the show has continuously bagged top ratings. The Price is Right was also the first show to break away from the normal quiz format. However, since its inception in 1956, the show has changed a lot. The Price is Right is not what you think. In this video, we'll tell you about how the show has changed over the years, as well as many other interesting facts about this hugely popular show that prove things aren't always as they look. The Price is Right debuted in 1956, and during the 50s and 60s, viewers were asked to send in their guesses about the prices of various items through postcards. Those who guessed right won. In his book, The Box: An Oral History of Television, Bob Stewart revealed that the show would get so many postcards, they had to hire housewives in Queens to open and check each postcard. Contestants have won all kinds of prizes in the show. However, in 1958, a man named Carl Slater struck it rich with his winnings. What did he win? A dining room set, a white Palomino horse, a suit of armor, and a trip to Scotland to get the armor. Amazing, isn't it? Well, don't be too surprised. In the past, audience members have also won things like a submarine, an island in St. Lawrence Seaway, and a Ferris wheel. We told you the show has changed a lot over the years, and thankfully so. Bob Barker has the distinction of being the Price is Right host with the longest run. He hosted the show for 35 years. However, he wasn't the show's first host. Bill Cullen, also known as the Dean of Game Shows, hosted it between 1956 and 65. Believe it or not, Cullen hosted a total of 23 game shows during his career. The Price is Right has a very catchy theme song. You listen to it once and you can't stop yourself from humming it all day. The song was created by Edward Woodley Kalehoff Jr., also known for creating many other hit theme songs, such as Double Dare, Monday Night Football, and PBS NewsHour. Winners sometimes have to wait for months before they can get their hands on their winnings. Why? The contestants are allowed to claim their prize only after the show has aired. Producers of the show once revealed that this is done to maintain excitement and thrill. In an interview, executive producer Mike Richards says they don't give away prizes to maintain a sense of surprise in the community. According to Mike, if a contestant won a car and took it home and showed it to everyone in the neighborhood before the show has aired, chances are people wouldn't be as interested in seeing the show. Are you surprised to know how long contestants have to wait to claim their winnings? Wait till we tell you about the taxes they have to pay. You'll never hear the show's producers talking about the taxes, as they're afraid any mention of the topic will hamper the show's rating. But we'll tell you all about it in just a minute. Meanwhile, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. You might think guessing the price of commodities is one of the easiest ways to win money, but this is far from reality. Guessing prices of things is difficult, primarily because the prices of different things are different in different states. So how do the producers of the show decide the prices of various commodities they feature on the show? Producer Mike Richards revealed during an interview that to ensure there is price continuity, the makers of the show obtain the prices from a single retailer in California. Fans of the show think that one just has to wait for the line "come on down" to be said by the show's host to be able to win big money. The reality is different. One audience member revealed audiences have to wait for long hours in front of the studio's gate before they're allowed to enter. Once they finally get inside, the taping takes another few hours. So if you want to win on The Price is Right, make sure you have a lot of free time on your hands. Audience members aren't only required to spend hours waiting outside the studio, they're also made to clap a lot, especially during commercials. One audience member revealed that to keep the momentum going, they're asked to keep clapping during the commercials. This audience member further revealed that by the time the taping ends, most people go back with aching arms and palms. Speaking of the catchphrase "come on down," not many people know that the line wasn't supposed to be a catchphrase. It was just another line in a script given to Bob Barker. However, it was the show's announcer Johnny Olson who decided to deliver the line in an over-the-top manner. The audience reacted with equal fervor and excitement to his "come on down" calls, and the phrase stuck. Today, it's the first thing that people think of when they think of The Price is Right. The show has been on for close to 6 decades, and though many things have changed during this time, one thing about The Price is Right that has remained the same, and though many things have changed during this time, one thing about The Price is Right has remained more or less constant. The show is still old school and mostly features carnival-style games. One particular game called Freeze Frame is hand-operated by a man who hides behind the machine. On good days, this person operating the freeze frame is introduced to audiences, and when that happens, the operator makes a few extra bucks. Not just the games on the show, but also the set hasn't changed since 1972. The first episode of the present-day version of the show was shot in CBS's Television City in LA, and the show continues to be taped at that same location until today. Prize producer Eric Mills once said in an interview that other than the prizes on the show, everything about it has remained more or less the same. Bob Barker hosted the show for 35 years and is certainly the most popular host. So when in 2007 Drew Carey replaced him, producers were worried that the show would lose its loyal audience. Therefore, to keep up excitement, the creators of the show decided to change the games a bit to make winning prizes easier. In a blog post, producer Roger Dobkowitz explained he and the other producers realized that for the show to stay popular, it was very important to make people win, at least during the first few weeks. So after Drew Carey replaced Bob Barker, the show went over budget by $700,000 in the first few months. When Drew Carey replaced Bob Barker in 2007, people were worried the new host wouldn't be able to live up to Bob's stature. However, over time, Drew has turned the show's loyal audience to his favor. How? Well, among other things, his decision to give away $500 from his earnings to anyone who makes the perfect initial bid certainly helped him win audiences and viewers. In 2017, CBS revealed that Drew had by 2017 given away $187,000 from his salary as cash prizes. Until 2012, The Price is Right, like most other game shows, hired female models. These models would stand next to the prizes up for grabs on the show. However, in 2012, keeping up with the times, the show hired its first male model. Rob Wilson was a Boston-based male model who got the job because he loved the show so much, he often faked sickness to stay home from school and watch it. Today, the show features many male models, with the most famous one being current presenter James O'Halloran, who won a nationwide casting call to become the second permanent male model on The Price is Right. Many people believe the winners on The Price is Right don't have to pay any taxes and take home the prize as winnings. The truth is, contestants do have to pay taxes, and more often than not, these taxes turn out to be massive. One contestant revealed they won $57,000 in prizes and had to pay $20,000 in taxes. Similarly, another contestant revealed winners have to sign proper paperwork regarding the taxes they must pay on their winnings. Bill Cullen was never physically well. Bill Cullen was born February 18, 1920 in Pittsburgh. The future game show host was an only child and proved rather sickly from a young age. At 18 months, he had a bout of polio that went on to scar him both mentally and physically for the rest of his life. Despite surviving, the future celebrity grew up to have some seriously debilitating physical limitations as a result of this battle. He also developed terrible eyesight, which resulted in him needing particularly thick lenses. Bill kept these lenses into his adulthood, and they became one of his signature attributes as a celebrity. Things got even worse for Cullen when he got into a bad car accident at age 17. This meant he underwent a period of hospitalization that lasted nearly a year. As with his bout with polio, his car accident had lasting effects. Bill Cullen wasn't going to let his worsening physical limitations stop him from starting a career in the entertainment industry. While some people dream of being big-name Hollywood stars, it seems what Bill always wanted to do was become a sportscaster. He developed quite a reputation for himself in the world of sportscasting thanks to his unique sense of humor. He could often be heard pulling pranks on his fellow sportscasters. He would carry over this rambunctious spirit into his game show hosting days, which were just around the corner. How Bill got into game shows. Bill ventured to New York City and began working in radio there. It was in New York that he worked on the game show circuit. His first hosting gig came via the game show Winner Takes All. Producers Mark Goodson and Goodson-Todman were no strangers to the game show format, and they were also the ones who went on to produce The Price is Right. Bill Cullen's work on Winner Takes All was the start of a working relationship with the two. Not only saw him host the first iteration of The Price is Right, but also several other game shows as well. Winner Takes All premiered on CBS in 1952. Several years later, he began hosting a competing show on the NBC channel called Place the Face. It revolved around the concept of celebrities being forced to identify people from their past that they were no longer well acquainted with. Bill Cullen performed hosting duties for a year. When that ended in 1955, it was only another year before he was given his iconic gig as the host of The Price is Right. This first iteration of the beloved game show premiered on CBS in 1956. Mark Goodson and Goodson-Todman produced it. The Price is Right proved a huge hit for all parties involved, with Bill Cullen hosting the daytime and syndicated versions of the show for nearly a decade. This video is brought to you by Vite Ramen. Vite Ramen is a small business crafting high-protein ramen in small batches here in the U.S. In just a few minutes, you have a super meal that's high-protein, healthy, and chock full of more macro and micronutrients than you can name off the top of your head. Vite Ramen is a full meal, not the tiny packets that leave you hungry after an hour. It keeps you full for hours because of its nutritional density, high protein, and high fiber. Their broths are made with real ingredients. Miso has real Japanese miso as the first ingredient, and so on. Vite Ramen is a lifesaver for keeping healthy when tired and/or lacking time to cook. It's easy to make and only takes 3 minutes. Our favorite flavor is chicken. We love how quickly this meal comes together and can't get over how great it tastes. Click on the link below to get a bundle that gives you $25 in value of free gifts and free shipping in the contiguous US. And don't forget to use my code FACTSFIRST at checkout for an additional 10% off. That's viteramen.com/FactsFirst, or just click the link below and use the code FACTSFIRST. Bill was too weak for The Price is Right's reboot. The version of The Price is Right that Bill Cullen hosted isn't the same version of the show audiences grew to love and know later on. However, it wasn't all that much different. The first iteration lasted from 1956 to 65, and he hosted the whole time. But by 1965, it seemed the game show's concept had run its course. People were no longer as interested in The Price is Right as they had been previously, and interest in the concept didn't renew until after its revival in 1972. Many of the differences between the original and the new one include the fact that the original iteration sometimes incorporated gag prizes into the proceedings. Bill Cullen seriously considered returning to the 1972 revamping of the show, but there were numerous reasons that he inevitably didn't return. The primary reason was his worsening physical condition. Decades on, Bill was still feeling the effects of both his childhood battle with polio and the car accident that had seen him hospitalized for nearly a year. For the new version of The Price is Right, the producers wanted a snappier format that would help attract modern audiences. With Bill's physical limitations, it was believed the host wouldn't be able to keep up with the new format. Bill agreed, and the hosting gig ended up going to an up-and-comer named Bob Barker. Bill's work in the game show circuit continued. Although Bill was deemed not the right fit for The Price is Right's reboot, that didn't mean the legendary celebrity's years of hosting game shows ended there. Bill's decidedly old-fashioned talents as a host continued to be utilized on a variety of other shows, leading to his death in 1990. He continued to host shows like Password, Match Game, and Pyramid. In the 1980s, he could be found hosting a revamped version of Password called Password Plus. Though he wasn't the official host of the program, he was brought on to guest host for several weeks after host Alan Ludden retired due to stomach cancer. In 1982, he made his first and only appearance on the revamped The Price is Right. He was given the chance to grace the screen alongside Bob Barker in an effort to promote a new game show that the former figure would host. That was called Child's Play, which was a game show where adult contestants were forced to try to guess words after being offered nonsensical definitions by children. Child's Play ran from 1982 to 83 on CBS, and one of its producers was Mark Goodson. In 1984, Bill started up a 2-year gig working as the replacement host for the program The Joker's Wild after its previous host passed away. That was Jack Barry, who had created the program. When all was said and done, Bill Cullen hosted over 20 different game shows over the course of his career. Other shows that featured him as a host include I Guess, Chain Reaction, Blockbusters, and Hot Potato. Bill's personal life and final years. Despite the fact that Bill suffered the effects of numerous childhood traumas, it ended up being smoking that killed the legendary game show host. He was a lifelong smoker and ended up passing away from lung cancer in 1990. At the time of his death, Bill was 70 years old. He'd been married 3 times over the course of his life, and his final marriage lasted until his death, but he never had any kids. During his fame, Bill married second wife Carol Ames, whom audiences may recognize from her singing career. They were married from 1949 to 55. In 1955, he married his third and final wife, Ann McComber. Ann was a model and dancer and made numerous appearances alongside her husband while he was hosting the game show Tattletales. Wardrobe malfunction. Considering The Price is Right airs pretty much every day, it comes as no surprise that over the course of the many years it's been on, there's been a wardrobe malfunction. It's almost surprising there haven't been more, but the most notable wardrobe malfunction happened in 1977. In those days, tube tops were in vogue. They're a fun but potentially revealing clothing choice. Women who opt for a tube top when they go on national television probably need to be extra careful with their movement, for fear the tube might come off their top. Such was the case for one unfortunate contestant. When her name was called, signaling she was the next contestant, she jumped up with exuberance, a little too much exuberance. Her sudden movement caused her tube top to pop off, revealing a lot more than the audience or host Bob Barker was expecting. She quickly readjusted her top to cover up and continued her walk down the aisle towards Barker. Fortunately, Bob was a consummate professional and took it in stride. He jokingly said he'd never had a welcome quite like that, and everyone, including the very embarrassed contestant, laughed. Hair today, gone tomorrow. When most of us picture Bob Barker in our mind, we likely see an older gentleman with gray hair and a long, skinny microphone. But what many people don't realize is Barker actually had dark brown hair in his youth, and the hair was still brown for much of his hosting time. As he started to go gray, he did what most men in Hollywood do. He started dyeing it. So for a while, his hair stayed the same color artificially. But eventually, he decided he wanted to stop dyeing it. It's unclear whether it was because he found it inauthentic or because it was simply too annoying to keep going. But regardless, he was sick of the dyed hair color. The problem was, there were almost no men on TV at the time with gray hair, and this was especially true of hosts. Barker actually had to convince the top brass at the network that if he let audiences see his natural gray hair color, they wouldn't decide to turn the channel. After a bit of convincing, Barker was given permission to stop dyeing his hair, and obviously he was correct that it wouldn't turn audiences off. Barker became more and more loved and famous over the years, and his iconic look included his natural gray hair. Replacing a legend. To many people, Drew Carey feels like a natural successor to the venerable Bob Barker. Carey's been brilliant in his hosting capacity, and fans have found the transition a seamless one, and Carey has also been hosting for many years now. So clearly he was the first and only choice, right? Not so fast. The network actually had a long and exhaustive search to find the right replacement. They first went after names like George Hamilton and Mario Lopez. John O'Hurley was also on the list, but none of those names ended up working out. Some said no, others weren't a right fit. Then Rosie O'Donnell sought out the job, garnering Bob Barker's endorsement in the process. You'd think that would have been enough to get an audition, but the network was against it from the get-go, so Rosie never got an audition. Another surprising omission from the list was longtime Nickelodeon host Mark Summers. Mark, for whatever reason, wasn't brought in. Eventually, after many offers, auditions, and debate, they went with Drew Carey, but clearly it was worth the wait. Get ready to wait. It might seem like a quick and easy process to get on The Price is Right. You just get tickets online and show up, right? But it's actually more complicated than that. A big reason is that the audience is much more a part of the show than on most game shows. Not only are contestants drawn from the studio audience, but the rest of the audience gets a decent amount of screen time too. And when they aren't being seen, they're being heard, shouting out advice. So it's vital to have a crowd that's full of energy, and even more important to have contestants who will have that X factor of being energetic and fun to watch. Audience members have to line up hours in advance on the street outside the studio lot. As they wait, members of the Price is Right production staff will occasionally pop out to see who in the line is showing a certain energy and sparkle. Then they're eventually led into the studio 10 at a time. Each group is presented to the producers, where they're given questions to get a sense of who they are, what they're like, and what they might be like as contestants. But before you start thinking it's a job interview where there are right answers, it's a lot less complicated. Producer Stan Blitz is on record as saying mostly what he looks for is energy. If a potential contestant can match his high energy in their interview, they're a lot more likely to get on the show as a contestant. Squeaky clean image. One of the reasons The Price is Right was able to stand out early on was because of its lack of scandals. In the early days of game shows, there were a ton of them, so it was hard to stand out in the crowd. As such, producers became willing to bend the rules just to get ahead. Some of the famous shows of the 50s included The $64,000 Question, Dotto, and 21 Questions. Each of these shows eventually became embroiled in major scandals, as it was revealed that contestants were being aided by producers. This was because producers and networks knew that audiences were riveted when a person had long-running success. Thus, their ratings would go up if they had people winning a lot, especially if it was one person who would also become a celebrity in their own right. But eventually, all of those shows were found out. There were even congressional hearings that looked into game shows in the 50s, helping contestants win. As such, the popularity of these shows plummeted, and before too long, they were off the air. But one show that never had any scandals, or even strong rumors of one, was The Price is Right. It's maintained a squeaky clean image for decades. Viewers who had been disillusioned by the cheating in the other shows at the time discovered the earnest and honest gameplay that The Price is Right was offering and found it appealing. The show has kept that squeaky clean image over the years, building up trust amongst audiences for decades. Obviously, after being on the air for so many years, there are a ton of behind-the-scenes secrets that are fun to find out about The Price is Right. These are only a smattering of them, but hopefully you enjoyed a bit of a peek behind the curtain, or should we say behind the Plinko board. The show has a timeless quality that has appealed to people from the mid-20th century well into the 21st century. It's easy to watch and fun to play along. And if you ever get a chance to attend a taping, you'll be talking about it for the rest of your life. Now it's time to hear from you. Who's your favorite Price is Right host? Bob Barker or Drew Carey? Let us know in the comments section below.